Last night's Democratic debate was apparently the most watched Democratic debate of all time. There were 20 million viewers across NBC and MSNBC that carried it. 13.5 million live streams, whether you're watching it on an Amazon Fire or on YouTube or whatever. The number one Democratic debate in history in total viewers and in the key demo 2554. That's huge. The only mystery that remains at this point about last night's debate is just exactly who are the fat broads and the horse-faced lesbians. We've got to get to the bottom of that. Joining us to talk about last night's debate and much, much more is author and columnist who you can read online at AnnCoulter.com. Ann Coulter. Ann, thanks so much for joining us.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you. I watched the debate twice. I enjoyed it so much.
I did the same thing.
Apparently, I'm not your average Democratic voter because I thought Bloomberg was great and the rest of them were petty and ridiculous. I thought he got a lot of good points in, but maybe that's what it takes in today's Democratic Party, just, saying crazy things, being woke. Obviously, that's what they were watching for. I mean, take the non-disclosure agreement, for example, which all of the media just thought, oh, Elizabeth Warren, this is her moment. Bloomberg is CEO of a company, a very apparently remunerative company. It's going to get a lot of lawsuits. And I should say, in the middle of this, I can't stand Bloomberg. He wants to take away our guns and throw open the border. So don't get this as me actually, thinking he'd make a fine president here. But okay, so lawsuits are brought against employees at the company. They always throw in the company itself for hostile environment. Without a non-disclosure agreement, I mean, some of these guys are innocent. Some of the hostile environment claims, some of them are quite serious, a governor dropping his pants and saying, kiss it. But some of them that I'm well aware of, actual cases. One woman brought a hostile environment claim because, I don't know if it was a boss or a colleague, had a vacation photo of his wife on his desk, and she was in a bikini. That's the sort of things. So both, the company and the employee are thinking, even an innocent employee, some may be guilty, some will be innocent, will say, screw this, I don't want to waste 2 years of my life. The plaintiff, even a plaintiff with a good cause, again, Paula Jones, might say, I don't want to waste 2 years of my life on the possibility that I could lose in the end. At the end of all this, it was absolutely absurd for Elizabeth Warren to keep haranguing him. Will you release these women? I mean, besides the legal impossibility of that, these are contracts between the company, usually a particular employee, and a private individual. Bloomberg doesn't have any authority to say, I waive the terms of this contract.
Let's go ahead and listen to that exchange. We have that. Let's listen.
I hope you heard what his defense was. I've been nice to some women. That just doesn't cut it. The mayor has to stand on his record, and what we need to know is exactly what's lurking out there. He has gotten some number of women, dozens, who knows, to sign non-disclosure agreements, both for sexual harassment and for gender discrimination in the workplace. So, Mr. Mayor, are you willing to release all of those women from those non-disclosure agreements so we can hear their side of the story?
We have a very few non-disclosure agreements.
How many is
Let me finish.
How many is there?
None of them accuse me of doing anything other than maybe they didn't like the joke I told. And let me put, there's agreements between two parties that wanted to keep it quiet, and that's up to them. They signed those agreements, and we'll live with it.
So wait, when you say it is up to, I just want to be clear. Some is how many? And when you say they signed them and they wanted them, if they wish now to speak out and tell their side of the story about what it is they allege, that's now okay with you? You're releasing them on television tonight?
Senator? No.
Is that right?
Senator, the company and somebody else, in this case, a man or a woman, or could be more than that, they decided when they made an agreement they wanted to keep it quiet for everybody's interest. They signed the agreements, and that's what we're going to live with.
I'm sorry. No, the question is, are the women bound by being muzzled by you? And you could release them from that immediately, because understand, this is not just a question of the mayor's character. This is also a question about electability. We are not going to beat Donald Trump with a man who has who knows how many non-disclosure agreements and the drip, drip, drip of stories of women saying they have been harassed and discriminated against.
This exchange reminds me of a point that Bloomberg kept making over and over and over again, not just at the debate last night, but throughout the campaign, which is, if you base your primary based on these insane issues that nobody in the real world cares about, you're going to lose because your wokeness is not something that the rest of the world shares. And they totally missed the point over and over and over again.
I couldn't agree with you more, and I want to point out the legal and business-wise illiteracy of what Elizabeth Warren was saying. I mean to say, well, if they want to speak now, can they? Because that was part of the deal. What if the other party to this deal wants to speak? No, that's not what the agreement is. It would be as if, and oh boy, on MSNBC they thought, oh, she nailed them. Okay, so say you and I have a contract. I'm going to pay you $100 for 10 widgets. So I give you the $100, and then Elizabeth Warren says to me, well, will you release John from having to give you the widgets? I think you should release him if both parties agreed to this. What if the other side doesn't want to perform? No, that's what the agreement is, you moron. Because the company, Bloomberg, and the employee are giving something up, whether the employee who is the alleged sexual harasser in these cases, whether he is guilty or innocent. He may have fought it. He may have said, no, if you're going to do this damage to my reputation, take a guilty one. Nobody saw that. I'm going to take my chances in court. Well, then the plaintiff ends up with nothing, and she's wasted 2 years of his life. He could be innocent and say, I don't want to settle this under any grounds. And the company comes and says to him, look, this is going to waste everyone's time. We're going to pay her off. She's signing a non-disclosure agreement. Let's just get this past us and get back to the work we do as a company. This is what the agreement is. The idea that, and also these women in the audience, for half the debate I was thinking, oh, this is fantastic. Well, exactly what you said. Black Lives Matter has taken over the Democratic Party. No, it's really the ladies, the feminists. Do you hear them all cheering for that? And what is it about my gender? It is only my gender that does the woo.
Yeah, they think they're at the Jerry Springer show.
Well, yes! It's embarrassing!
Now, let's see if you can explain this to me, because going into this debate, not just in the state of Nevada, but nationwide, Bernie Sanders is now in the driver's seat. He's now leading in all of those polls. Michael Bloomberg is doing better than he was doing, but he's still not leading in that state. He's still not leading nationally. Everyone went after him and gave Bernie a pass. Well, guess what? If you give the guy who's in the lead a pass, he's going to win.
Well, I think I think incorrectly looking at what happened to Elizabeth Warren when she went after Bernie. I mean, as with Bloomberg last night, I didn't think anybody could make me feel sympathetically toward Bernie Sanders. Well, Elizabeth Warren did. That claim that he had told her a woman could never be president, he heatedly denied it. I thought at the debate he made several points. He did fact, suggesting that he was telling the truth. One was a video going around YouTube where he was talking about how a woman could be president back, 30 years ago. Another one was his claim, no, I said, I'll step aside if you're going to run, but if you're not going to run, I'm running. And some other point. And her entire body of evidence supporting this claim, which I happen to think is true, but apparently Bernie doesn't, was just to say, no, you said it. Oh, you deny it? You're calling me a liar. Well, okay, but the only you guys disagree. I mean, maybe somebody's misremembering. Maybe somebody's not telling the truth. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. But to say either accede to my description of this horrible thing you said, or you're calling me a liar. Well, anyway, after that debate performance, Bernie went up, Warren went down. So I think a lot of Democrats may be thinking, ooh, these Bernie bros and the Twitter army, who wants to take them on? Also, there's just this is a larger point, and it really is a terrible thing about America, American politics, let me put it that way. And it ought to be recognized, and that is, no matter where you are on the political spectrum, the rule is no enemies to the left. New York Times will not attack Mother Jones or The Nation magazine, but oh boy, does National Review attack, well, basically the entire Republican Party, which is to the right of them.
Yeah, the one exchange last night, and Bloomberg hasn't got all the memos because he's a new Democrat. He's used to showing up to these debates and debating other Republicans and going to Republican meetings and Republican conventions, and he seemed a little shell-shocked by his surroundings. One of the exchanges last night between he and Bernie was where he called Bernie a communist. Let's go ahead and listen to that.
A large company, would you support what Senator Sanders is proposing?
Absolutely not. I can't think of ways that would make it easier for Donald Trump to get reelected than listening to this conversation. It's ridiculous. We're not going to throw out capitalism. We tried that. Other countries tried that. It was called communism, and it just didn't work.
And then Jim Cramer on CNBC talked about that after the debate.
Is he not like a genuine? Is he really a socialist or is he a communist? What is socialist about what he wants? Joe, isn't he more of a communist?
He is. Well, I'm not saying that. I don't. But it's a fine line, and it's authoritarianism either way because you just can't enforce it unless you put up.
It's a race to see who's the poorest.
What do you think he is? Because he says he's a democratic socialist, and when you accuse him of being a communist, he gets all huffy. But the definition of socialism is fairly similar to communism, where the government owns the means of production. You hear him talk about health care and other subjects, and that's what it sounds like to me.
Yes, it's like communism is like abortion and other great Democrat ideas. They keep changing the name, hoping we won't notice. So, socialism is choice, as communism is to abortion.
You think the country will buy that under just about any circumstances? Him calling himself a socialist. It's not us calling him a socialist, it's him calling himself a socialist. And I think there's a difference between the two.
I mean, I'm worried about that because I know it's very unpopular, but I like to go into elections being pessimistic. I mean, look, with Trump tweeting out all of this nonsense about Department of Justice, if he loses Bill Barr, he'll lose the one person who in his administration who knows anything and is doing anything. He is completely screwing everything up with this tweeting. He's the most self-centered person. I was noticing yesterday on Twitter, something I've noticed all the time. I love Trump supporters, and that's part of the reason I am so enraged with Trump, that he has completely betrayed his supporters, who keep, rallying to his side because they're loyal. He's the most disloyal person I have ever seen in my life. To think that you could make it through politics. I just heard a rumor that he's considering endorsing Jeff Sessions' opponent. Okay, but remember 2015 when the entire Republican Party, and the aforementioned National Review were doing everything they could to stop Trump? There were two nationally known politicians who really went out on a limb. Well, three, if you wait until 2016. Senator Jeff Sessions, Attorney General of Kansas, Chris Kobach, and after the New Hampshire primary, Chris Christie. All of them have been crapped on, attacked, no help given, lied to by President Trump. So, yeah, I kind of think anybody could beat him.
But you look at the polls, and he's still running strong. There was one that came out today in Wisconsin showing him cleaning all of their clocks. And that was a state he wasn't even supposed to win the last time.
Well, I don't need to say this to a political genius like you, but remember 1992. The first George Bush had 90% approval ratings, and by the time the election came around, he was wiped out. I mean, the odds are, I think, if the election were held today, as long as the economy is doing reasonably well, it could even dip a little bit, and the odds are just overwhelming. It's hard to take out an incumbent president. It's happened very rarely, but I don't know. You never. What goes up can come down, and any Republican would have cut regulations, cut taxes. Trump did not do the things he promised to do to get the forgotten man back to work, like build a wall. Stop admitting masses and masses of unskilled immigrants to compete with our unskilled Americans. I mean, I guess there's a little more manufacturing, but if there's a dip in the economy, I think like I say, I like to be pessimistic. Assume the worst, and you'll work harder.
All right, Ann Coulter, thanks so much for joining us today. We always appreciate it.
Good to talk to you, John Phillips. Bye-bye.
Likewise, you can read Ann online at anncoulter.com. You can follow her on Twitter at Ann Coulter and buy all of her books at amazon.com. Treason happens to be my favorite.